They thought she was too simple, too quiet, too unimportant. So when a group of top students decided to mock her, they dragged her to the board and handed her the hardest calculus problem in the entire syllabus, expecting her to freeze, stutter, and embarrass herself. But what happened next didn't just silence the room. It changed one student's life forever. Welcome back to Tales and Turns. Before we start this incredible story, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing from every corner of the world. Now, settle in and let this story unfold. Lena wasn't the type who stood out. She sat in the back of the classroom, always quiet, always taking notes in a tiny, worn-out notebook. She dressed simply, spoke softly, and rarely raised her hand. In a competitive college program filled with loud confidence and polished ambition, Lena was invisible. And for most people, that was enough reason to look down on her. She didn't come from money or privilege, and many assumed silence meant weakness. No one bothered to ask her why she worked so hard or what brought her to that campus every day with determination tucked carefully behind her shy smile. In that same class sat Adrian Lang, the kind of student everyone knew. Handsome, wealthy, brilliant in a showy way. He loved attention, loved praise, and loved being the smartest person in the room. And although he had never spoken directly to Lena, he had made jokes about her to his friends. "She looks like she's still learning multiplication tables." He'd laugh. His group of friends followed his lead, snickering at her thrifted clothes and quiet nature. To them, she was someone to overlook. To Adrian, she was someone to mock. One morning, the professor announced a surprise challenge. He wrote 4 calculus problems on the board, 3 difficult ones and 1 nearly impossible. The kind that made even the best students shift in their seats. "Solve any one of these," he said, "and you'll earn bonus points." Murmurs filled the room as students analyzed the problems like prey sizing up predators. Adrian grinned, confident he would impress everyone again. But then his eyes drifted toward Lena, who was calmly flipping through her notebook. A spark of mischief lit inside him. "Watch this," he whispered to his friends, and before anyone could stop him, he called out, "Professor, Lena wants to try!" Heads turned. Lena froze, startled. She hadn't raised her hand. Adrian leaned back smugly, expecting her to refuse, expecting her to panic. The professor looked at her for confirmation. "Do you want to attempt one?" he asked kindly. The room buzzed with whispers. Lena stood slowly, her heart pounding in her ears. She didn't want to be mocked. She didn't want attention. But she also remembered her mother's words from years ago. "Silence doesn't mean you hide. Sometimes it means you're gathering strength." Taking a shaky breath, she nodded. Adrian's friend snickered as she walked toward the board, her hands trembling. The professor handed her a marker. "Choose whichever problem you like," he said. She looked at the board. Not at the easy problems, not the medium ones, but at the 4th one. The hardest one, the one even Adrian didn't want to touch. Gasps spread across the class. "She's going to humiliate herself," someone whispered. Adrian smirked, leaning forward with predatory excitement. "This is going to be good," he muttered. But Lena didn't hear them. She had already slipped into a world where numbers made sense and everything else faded away. She began writing. Slowly at first, then faster. Her hand moved with confidence, clarity, and precision. The classroom fell silent. The marker glided over the board as she built each line of reasoning like a puzzle only she could see the edges of. Adrian's smile faltered. His eyebrows knitted together. His friends leaned in. Even the professor's eyes widened as he watched her bypass one method and choose a more elegant path. One that required deeper understanding, not memorization. She didn't hesitate, didn't break rhythm. It was as if the problem had been waiting for her. 10 minutes passed, then 15. By the 20th minute, Lena stepped back from the board. The solution was flawless, clean, logical, and beautiful in a mathematical way only true enthusiasts could recognize. The professor walked toward it slowly, reading every step. He adjusted his glasses. Read it again. Then turned to the class. "This is exceptional," he said, voice thick with astonishment. "Not only correct, but solved in a method I haven't seen a student use in years." A wave of whispers rippled across the room. Adrian felt something he had never felt before, a sting of shame. Lena didn't look triumphant. She wasn't smiling or boasting. She simply offered the marker back with a humble nod and whispered, "Thank you." She returned to her seat quietly, as though she had merely answered a simple question. But something in the classroom had shifted. Students who once ignored her now looked at her with awe. Even those who had laughed minutes earlier stared at her with respect. And Adrian, who always thought he owned the room, felt every ounce of his arrogance crumble. His face flushed red. He couldn't look at her. He couldn't look at anyone. The truth hit him hard. He had mocked someone whose intelligence far surpassed his own. After class, instead of rushing out as she usually did, Lena stayed behind to gather her notebook. Her hands were still trembling, not from fear, but from release, from the overwhelming rush of standing up for herself unintentionally. She didn't notice Adrian approaching until his shadow fell over her desk. She glanced up cautiously. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't posturing. His voice was quiet, uneven even. "Lana, I'm sorry," he said. She blinked in surprise. "I shouldn't have pushed you or made jokes. I was wrong." For the first time, he sounded human. Not a show-off, not a king of the classroom, just a young man confronting his flaws. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. There was no anger in her voice, no pride, just sincerity. And that sincerity struck Adrian harder than any insult could have. "Could you?" He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Could you teach me? I mean calculus. I want to understand it like you do." Lena stared at him, caught off guard. But then she saw something genuine in his eyes. Humility, curiosity, and hope. She smiled softly. "I can try," she said. They walked out of the classroom together. Two people changed by a single moment of truth. Word spread across campus quickly. Lena was no longer invisible. She became the quiet legend whispered about in study groups and late-night dorm conversations. But she didn't chase attention. She didn't want glory. She simply kept studying, kept helping those who needed her, kept being herself. And Adrian, who once mocked her, became one of her closest study partners. Over time, he would tell people that the day she solved that impossible problem wasn't the day he felt insulted. It was the day he learned what real brilliance looked like. The day he learned humility. The day someone he underestimated changed his life forever.